Namaste, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to this evening's filter coffee with Dr. Shiv Shastri. Dr. Shiv Shankar Shastri is a retired general and laparoscopic surgeon. He did his MBBS and MS in general surgery in JIPMER, Pondicherry, followed by FRCS in Edinburgh, UK. Outside the field of medicine, Dr. Shastri has maintained an interest in military aviation, strategic affairs, linguistics, and subjects related to prehistoric India. He has written 3 books, one on Pakistan and the other entitled Tearing Down the Aryan Invasion Myth, which is the subject today, which we are going to discuss today, and one recounting 40 years in surgery. He is currently working on a book on the mental colonization of Indians. Truly, we need to decolonize all that is wrong, and a great effort, sir. Congratulations on your future book. He's also taught himself 3D animation as an aid to creating aviation related content on his YouTube channel, Cyber Surge. I was just talking to him a few minutes ago, and he said he started off self learning computers way back in the 90s with an Intel 286 processor and used to do videos, small little animation programs, and all those things. From being a man of varied interests, it's a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on Verandah Club this evening. And this book, The Tearing Down on the Aryan Invasion Myth, is published by Subbu Publications. And Dr. Shiv Shastri ji has written it in a very concise and as simple as possible, lucid manner that anybody can understand. It's a must read for all of us, a compelling read, a wonderful book. And though the book has around 200 pages, but the amount of references which has gone into this book is something mind boggling. And I was talking to Doctor on the time period it took to complete the book. Doctor said it took 7 years easily. I mean, I have read a couple of books and easily it is. I can imagine the effort gone into this. Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for this wonderful welcome. It's always a pleasure to meet new people online or in physical space. Thanks very much for inviting.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we'll start off with a few questions from your book, and through the journey, we can you can elaborate on your book, sir.
Absolutely.
So, how advanced was our ancient Indian culture when compared to the rest of the world back then?
One of the problems we face here is lack of credibility. Okay, and there is a fundamental, what shall I say, way in which we see our civilization versus the way, particularly the Christian civilization has gone. I will try and explain. Please pardon me for digressing a little bit. If you read even post-Vedic texts like Mahabharata and Ramayana, you find that in terms of thinking, in terms of the morality, the logic, and the fact that there are cheats, there are thieves, there are murderers, there are good people, there are people who follow dharma. All these are very advanced thoughts. And no matter what date you give it, whether you give it some Wikipedia date of 500 BC, or you give the Ramayana, say, Nileshok's date, the thing is, thinking was very advanced. So the thing is, the human mind has not suddenly evolved in the last 2000 years. Now, the problem we have in our education is, imagine a 50-story building. And in this 50-story building, the 11th floor, they call it as floor 0. And then they come down 1, 2, 3, 4, floor 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And above the 11th floor, it's -1, -2. See, we have started looking at dates like this. And there is a Western kind of, particularly in America, there's this thing called manifest destiny, where they feel that, humans are continuously evolving. And, so the basic idea is that humans in the past were stupid. They must have been very stupid and we are very clever. Look at our, that is not true. Our actually, civilization has been very, very advanced for for thousands of years, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10,000 years in terms of thinking. Technology. Now, this word technology itself is a very new word. Ultimately, what are you looking at in life? You're looking at peace, harmony, procreation, and tools, maybe worship, yes, maybe philosophy and things like that. All this has been there for a very long time. They've had ways and means of doing it. You don't need aliens to come and do things. People work with their hands and do all that. And it's only in the actually literally only in the last 300 400 years we've had the industrial revolution, and we've had a burgeoning of sort of in many ways we've become stupid. We have tools that do everything, and then we now imagine that we are the best, which is not correct. So I think there is no doubt at all that human beings were very advanced. Did they have aircraft? Did they have vimanas? I don't know. I can't tell you that. But you do know. There is another thing that I wish to work upon, because I have no explanation. Now let me quote another problem. My problem is, our problem is that we are all educated to search and do research in a particular way. Okay, we have to find certain references, we have to find certain proof and things like that. And the funny thing is, if you look at South America, there are areas in South America that have a remarkable connection with India. It's absolutely astounding. I've collected up references. How do you explain it? How do you explain it? So, the problem for us is to use the tools that we have been given from our Western type of education to reach that. That is what I did in my book, basically. We as Indians, we have such a low opinion of ourselves, because, the minute we quote something ancient, our people will laugh at us and say, stupid, this is what it is. So what happens is, you have to use their paradigms. You have to use Western paradigms, Western references, which are often suppressed, to reach conclusions about this. So this is how. Sorry, I hope I don't know if I answered your question. Feel free to say that I did not, if I don't answer the question. Yeah. I take it.
Very well answered, sir. Basically, there are 4 hoaxes you have touched upon in your book, which have been used to back up and spin the Aryan invasion theory, which is the Aryan Dravidian fault line, the Avastan language and geographic location, and the Proto-Indian European language link. Now, coming to 2 things. One is the social order and how it was a perfect harmony back then in India, until the invaders came in, of course. And the other thing is science and language. Basically, you have debunked it wonderfully, sir. I'm just demystifying it for our audience through you. So science and language, obviously, we were far more advanced. Language is something which will evolve only when you have an advanced culture. Then people start talking, communicating. Then the higher order of evolution comes, and then science happens. So obviously, we must have been a very flourishing, great civilization in place. So your thoughts on that?
Okay, that's a very interesting. I love talking like this. See, the idea that language came first and science came later can only be derived by first dividing up human knowledge into language as one block and science as another block. So this exactly defines the difference between ancient Indian knowledge and Western knowledge. See, Western theory is about reductionism. I think it was Richard Dawkins who very nicely wrote about, for instance, how do they find out the structure of atoms? They bash them with protons and things, with neutrons and things. So this is like smashing a watch to see how it works. Okay, this is called reductionism. In reductionism, you don't look at the forest, you look at the trees. Okay. Now, so for this reason, when we go to school and when we go to college, we have separate subjects. We have language, we have science, we have history, and under science, we have physics, we have chemistry. So everything is split up. It's all chopped into parts as though there is no connection. But if you look at Vedic education, okay, in the old days, it was all together. it was not separate textbooks. You don't say that today we are going to study geography and pick up that textbook. Everything is there in the whole. So the way of looking at life was completely different. Now, as regards language, it can be argued without the sort of proof that is required. It can be argued that language must have come first and science came later. Okay, because you're giving a particular definition of science. But if you read certain authors, including Aurobindo and a few others, how did language come? And how are some of the earliest words that came? Uh, Basically, they were words to describe, say, tearing, how a wolf tears flesh and things like that. So certainly language came first. But I am certain that certain aspects, for instance, the wheel, they keep saying wheel was invented somewhere, but nobody knows. It is very simple that if somebody had to say pull a rock or a heavy weight or a tree, even he would find that if there were pebbles underneath or if there was another round log below, you can pull it easily. Even nowadays they do it. So that is science. That is engineering. That's application of science. You may not know the theory. You may not realize that rolling, the rolling action actually reduces friction because the area of contact between the rolling object, you may not know the theory, but you're sort of applying science. So I think most of these things came up together. I think the one major difference between the old Indian thing was the Indian way was to look internally. Okay. And I read a very interesting theory recently that, with very few distractions, lights and things like that, people were able to much better sense the universe, much better able to, connect with the universe and then come up with theories of like the Atman, the Brahman, and things like that, where internally you are connected with everything else. So right now in neurology, they're heading in that direction. Maybe 40, 50 years ago, not 40, yeah, it's about 60, 70 years ago, atomic scientists were getting there because, all physicists seem to find that ultimately, when you get down to very fundamental physics, you start looking at dilemmas and explanations that are there in ancient Indian philosophy, in Advaita and things like that. So there is something there. There's no meeting point. There's no common language. And the Western science has gone for reductionism and for making sort of life easier. So that is the way it has gone. So this is how I feel about this question. Yeah.
Fantastic, sir. I think in ancient India, religion and science were together and it was a distilled form of each other complementing and developing. We were a far more evolved society. I can quote from your book on the that's just a small example of how Panchatantra moved from India to Greece in 500 BC, and Jataka tales, which was on the Buddha tales, that also both the volumes moved to the Greece and then it came back to the world as Aesop's fables.
Yeah.
Very nicely, you have something very interesting, sir. Sir, and what was this need for the Aryan and Dravidian fault lines by the imperialists to divide us, sir? Just to understand.
See, the thing is, basically, they, how shall I say it? I had explained this in my book as well. See, for the Europeans, there were two things. Language meant nation, which is why you have nations like France, Germany, Italy speaking Italian, France speaking French. These were all different nations. That means to say you're a complete country. You cannot mix with the other person. The idea is, they're completely, this European Union is a recent thing. That's one thing. The second thing, of course, comes from the Bible. In those days before the Industrial Revolution, the main information that Europeans had about themselves came pretty much from the Bible, okay, and some biblical history. So then, as I have mentioned in my book, these fellows started exploring. The Industrial Revolution started. These guys started exploring, and they went to the area between Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and they found these ancient ruins. Okay, and then they discovered that these ancient ruins are all mentioned in their Old Testament, the Old Testament. And then they started, because they already hated Jews. And they thought, what is this? These Semites, these Jews, their history is older than us. So, this really got them very upset, because according to the Bible, the story that I mentioned is, this man Noah, Noah's Ark. Noah is supposed to have had a boat called the Ark, and when there was a great flood, he put all the animals in the world into the boat and rescued them. So now Noah had three sons. He had three sons: Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay. Now apparently Ham saw Noah naked. That means he probably saw his father having sex or something. I don't know. And he cursed his son Ham and said, "Your descendants will all be slaves." So it became that Hamites, the descendants of Ham, were all black people and slaves because they had black slaves. Shemites, the sons of Shem, became Semites, that is the Jews. And then the sons of Japheth became the favored Christians. So here now these Japhethites of Europe were really jealous that this Semitic history is older. Around that time, they came to India and they discovered Sanskrit. And they discovered that, and from Sanskrit, they realized that there was a connection between all these European languages. They didn't know why European languages were connected. It's only after they studied Sanskrit, they realized that Sanskrit has 50 words related to English, 100 words related to German, 2000 words related to Latin. Then they suddenly realized, oh, heck. So then they initially thought this is the mother language. Okay. Now, once this was the mother language, two problems cropped up. One problem was, how can these black fellows? Initially, they thought they were white, but then they realized that Bengali is a black guy, black dark Bengalis. So they said, how can we have these black fellows? So slowly they started moving the origins towards that side. Then this side, then they came up with these words. How this whole business of Arya. They found the word Arya in the Rig Veda, and they said these people, we are called Aryans, which is complete nonsense, because it's like, again, as I have said in my book, you have in a society, you may have engineers, you may have doctors, you have plumbers, you have salespeople, you have shopkeepers, you have farmers, different groups of people. They all belong to one society. They're not races. They're not race of farmers, race of doctors, race of engineers. It's not like that. So Arya was a particular group of people in society who followed certain Vedic rituals and certain sacrifices they made. And those who were Anarya, not Arya, were sometimes called Dasyus. But these people said Arya is a race. They added N and said Aryan race. It's like Sundari, for instance. I've said this in my book. Sundari means beautiful woman. You can't add an N, Sundarian, and say there is a race of beautiful. This is what they did. Okay. Meanwhile, they came to, again, because these fellows came from Calcutta and then from Chennai to Madras. Okay, these British. Now here they found these people, again, black fellows. So they couldn't be, they couldn't be this thing. And they said, this is a different language. And they cooked up something. They said these, then they started connecting with Vedas and said, one was Aryans, other was Dasyus, and they sent them away. So this was a complete theory. The theory was aimed at saying that the language came from Europe, the superior people came from Europe, and just like Europeans were conquering many nations, these people also in ancient days, when they brought their language to India, they conquered people and sent them away. So this is how they, it was their own supremacy. See, one of the things we are in our education, we are taught to think, white man, Vellagaran, he's such a fair fellow, such it's our fellow. This is our kind of the way we talk. It's not like that at all. No, those fellows were biased right from the beginning, So that's how they came up with this, and they divided the two. Before 200 years, there's no reference to Aryan or Dravidian. It's all this literature which we believe, because we read their literature and say, "Hurry, it says this." We believe that, we swallow that. That's part of our colonization. That is how they divide it up. There's a useful tool to cut things. They're still using it.
Correct, sir. In your book, in page number 88, on you quoted A.H. Sais, who was written it in 1889. Had it not been for Sanskrit with its copious grammar, its early literature, and the light which it threw on the forms of Greek and Latin speech, comparative philology might never have been born. Sanskrit was the magician's wand which had called the new science into existence, and without the help of Sanskrit, the philologist would not have advanced beyond the speculations and guesses of classical scholars. Just what you explained, sir, from your book, just a small paragraph I read.
Yeah.
Very, very enlightening. And on the gene theory, what is your takes? How you have beautifully debunked the gene theory and through the AAT through the gene theory.
No, it's very simple. There is no separate Aryan gene. There's no Aryan, there's no separate Aryan gene. Actually, Indian genes are very well connected. I don't remember how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago or something, a paper came out. There's a man called Reich. And then he published a paper where he divided Indian genes into ancestral North Indian and ancestral South Indian genes. Okay. And in fact, I objected when the original paper came out. I wrote to, they didn't care, why would they listen to me? I said, it's wrong to use terminology like this because you're again propagating some kind of difference. So they said that the so-called ancestral South Indian genes had some very ancient genes connected to the Onge people of Andamans. So, the ASI has some Onge genes, ANI does not have, and ANI is related to Europe. It's all bunkum. Actually, Indians have a very clear mix of ANI and ASI. If you look at sort of North and Northwest India, it's 60% ANI and 40% ASI. And if you look at Southern India, it's 50-50 or 60-40, the other way around. It's a complete mix. And if you look at the detail, a lot of the genes are just originated in India. In the meantime, a lot of confusion was created, R1A1, M17, this gene, that gene. One particular very interesting one was this R1A1 gene. They said that this is the Aryan gene. Okay, this is the gene that came from there. The funny part is there's a part of R1A1 called M17. Now, if you look at the origin of M17, it is around Gujarat area. Okay, then the same M17 is the oldest. So, see, how do you know a gene is old? Okay, now all genes are long molecules. Okay, they're long molecules, and there are some parts that are sort of, you can call it nonsense codes. They mean nothing. They do nothing. See, if a proper code in the gene, the genetic code, if a correct area gets damaged and it's not repaired, it causes an anomaly. It can cause death. It can cause a hole in the heart. It may cause a baby born with a, no brain and things like that. So those genes will die. But there are parts of genes that can be damaged and changed, which don't cause any changes. So how do you know which is old and which is young, which is not? It's like scratches on your car. You buy a new car, there are no scratches. The older the car is, the more and more the scratches are there in the paint. So same way, the greater the number of nonsense genes that have been damaged shows it's older. So they found this M17 oldest was in Gujarat. Then they found that it had gone all the way to Poland. Now in Poland, it mutated again 5,000 years ago into what is called M458. Now that M458 never came back to India. So that means the migration out of India of genes was before 5000 BC, much before 5000 BC, and that never came back. So there's a lot of evidence, I think the genetic theory is completely debunked. I don't think we need to even call. And in any case, tell me one thing, okay? You find a dead body and you do a genetic picture, somebody, you dig it up to get a skeleton. When you look at the genes, will it be written there, this fellow spoke Tamil, this fellow spoke Hindi? You can't make out. How do you make out? It's all nonsense. Could have spoken anything.
Correct. In page number 122, I shall quote your question and answer, sir. Are there Aryan genes? No, there is no such entity called an Aryan gene. The word Aryan was created by 19th century European linguists from the word Arya in the Rig Veda, and it was claimed that Aryans came to India from somewhere in or near Europe, bringing in the Indo-European language Sanskrit with them. Historian, linguists, and archaeologists have tried to find proof of this theory by looking for genetic links between Europe, Eurasia, and India. No gene or set of genes has been found to explain the distribution of Indo-European, formerly called Indo-Aryan languages. Beautifully, you have put a full stop to this false narrative through which through the gene theory of supporting the Aryan invasion. So the youngsters have to read this book because it answers. You give the basis of it and also the answers beautifully. So the presence of Saraswati River and how the references in the Rig Veda and the Vedas, and how it was and the ignoring the river and the Aryan invasion theory on that. So what is your
Okay, see, they have found evidence of a river, some river in the northwest. Okay, it flows through Punjab into Rajasthan into some river. Is it Saraswati or not? How do you know? You don't know. The only thing that is known is British guys, okay, not Indians, not Hindutva guys, not Sanghis, nobody, in the 18th century and 19th century and 20th century, they they spoke to local people, and local people used to call that the old Saraswati River. So that is how that area got the reputation of having a river called Saraswati. Still, that is not proof. Okay. Then they found that the riverbed itself was extraordinarily broad, 5-6 kilometers. So they knew definitely there is a river there. So how do you say it is the Saraswati River? I think the real okay. And what is the antiquity and what is the origin of the river? Now they've done drilling, they've drilled cores, and they've done isotope analysis to show that Himalayan rocks, that there was a river, and the river dried up around the river ran dry around 2500 BC. So now we have proof of some river coming from the Himalayas right up to the sea, dried up in 2500 BC. Now, what river could have been there? How do you know? So the main proof comes from old Indian texts, including the Mahabharata, Manusmriti, and all. It is the geographical extent. Okay. Now there are lands called Aryavarta, and to the south of Aryavarta is Madhya Desha. In all these cases, the bounds, the geographical bounds are like this. North is Himalayas, south is Vindhyas, to the east is Prayag, where the Ganga and Jamuna rivers meet, and to the west is Vinashana. Vinashana is the place where the Saraswati River dried up. So it's very specific. So that means that there is only one area in one part of the world where you have Himalayas, north, Vindhya, south, Ganga and Jamuna meeting in the east, and some river. So this is clinching proof that Saraswati, the river in that area, was the Saraswati. Okay. What is the age of the river? We know it dried up in 2500 BC. So any reference, and we also have from text that it was drying up, because Vinashana, drying up the Saraswati, there are references in ancient texts. So any reference we have of a flowing river that used to be a mighty river can only be before 2500 BC. So if you talk about Veda speaking of a mighty Saraswati river, it has to be before 2500 BC. How much before? Of course, is I can only say what I got from whatever references I could find. There are other people who have done much deeper research into the age of the Saraswati and things like that, like Nilesh Oak, for instance.
Yes,
I hope
yes,
that
sir.
answers your question.
Yes, yes. So in your chapter 11 on the Saraswati River and the Aryan invasion theory, I'll read this, which I found it very interesting. Page number 138. There is no doubt that a river existed in the site of the Saraswati as noted in old texts. Veda scholar R.L. Kashyap has this to say, quote, Saraswati was undoubtedly a mighty river in the Rig Vedic age, which flowed from the mountain heights at the sea as declared in Rig Veda 795-2. The Saraswati verses were revealed or composed more than 8,000 years before the present era. According to geologists, this time synchronizes with the first interglacial period in the Holocene age, marking the break-up of glaciers and release of the pent-up waters, which was the source of the Saraswati and Sindhu. Beautiful, sir. This explains the antiquity of this great land, Bharat, and how science, geography, geology, religion have all been intertwined together. And I can't say it's a guiding light for us today and will ever be. One of the greatest things of our civilization has been the knowledge which we have possessed, superior knowledge compared to other civilizations. Perhaps astronomy is the most underrated subject when it comes to pre-college level education in India. But I personally feel astronomy has been the guiding light of our civilization. It explains the antiquity of Bharat, and scholars like Tilak, Balagangadhar Tilak, to the present day modern contemporary historians like Nilesh Oak have used astronomy to date the events in the Veda and also place probable dates for Mahabharata, Ramayana, and things like that. Your take, sir.
Yeah, see, the fundamental problem is this Gregorian calendar that we use. It's a very dumb calendar, but it's a simple one. It's a very, very easy one to follow, and we are given it. If you look at the old Hindu calendar, that goes much more according to astronomy. You actually require astronomical knowledge. And if you were to have a Vedic education, you would have that kind of astronomical knowledge. And one of the handicaps we have today is lighting and pollution, because you can't see stars. Most of the time, you really cannot even see the stars. You cannot make astronomical observations like it was possible, say, even 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, even maybe 500 years ago. We've just lit up our nights and we call it technology. So now, we have to use software like Stellarium, or we have to have an app on our phone to see what it is. But I think it's well worth trying to understand the Hindu calendar, because it has a very deep connection, with our own society, the way they follow it, and also, with seasons and the way things change. So it's there's a very deep. In fact, the thing is, I'm myself so much a descendant of Macaulay that even I have not studied it. I don't follow it. This is something I should do, I think, among other things. I think this is a thing worth looking at. Just look at it, whether try and understand what's going on, the precession, how the calendar was made with observations of the moon and integrated with observations of the sun. Both these were done together and integrated together. So that's a very and every if you look at our own languages, be it any Indian language, all the seasons, you have Kartikeya or something like that, are all based on that calendar. It's not January, February at all. We've had Shivratri. They say that Shivratri is the time when the cold goes away, the heat comes in, and you have all these absolutely fascinating cultural connections with the ancient astronomy.
Absolutely, sir. For example, till recently, the Macaulay school of thought had not included monsoon in our education, school education, sir. But our country civilization has always been dependent on monsoon showers. Like, for example, this part of the country where I am talking from, Coimbatore, as you know, is dependent on the southwest monsoon. And later, during the Diwali time, we get the receding rainfall, which is the northeast monsoon. So the agricultural pattern, the food cultivation, everything is timed to this rain and not subjected to the floods post and post monsoon, things like that. So for a flourishing civilization like India, we obviously must have had great understanding of the weather patterns. I mean, there are no
Yeah,
satellites back
this
then.
is a very fundamental thing. Actually, David Frawley, that is Vamadeva Shastri, he has written a lot about that. How it's essential for life. You need to live with that. You can, and the part of our colonization is like this. I don't know about now, but when we were children, and even my own children's generation. So you ask them to write a story. You have a child who's in maybe third, fourth, fifth standard. You ask the child to write a story and say she will write. It was a bright sunny day. It started raining. I said, rain, rain, go. This rain, rain, go away. Bright sunny day. We are a sunny country. We love rain. We praise the rain. But it's the British who have dark days. where it rains all the time and they want the rain to go away. But we've inculcated this sort of nonsense in our country. And sorry, I'm digressing.
No, no, no,
I
it's
yeah,
necessary.
I go to schools, government schools, all over Karnataka. I've seen Tamil Nadu also. Boys wearing ties. The tie is one of the worst possible things because in the UK, fine, it's cold, so heat escapes from inside the collar. So you put a tie, the tie actually holds the heat inside. It keeps you warm. But in this country, what are we doing? We're sort of sunk in colonization. So anyway, sorry about
Correct, correct, absolutely. In fact, I recently came across a great scholar based in Kerala those days, scholar Madhava. I saw a small documentary where there is a Madhava School of Mathematics. A temple is there, and there are two stones there. And the legend is that one stone is where he used to meditate and write. The other stone is where he used to lie down and see the sky and plot the patterns. And that is how they spotted the planetary positions. I am but truly amazed at the knowledge which we have possessed. And Indian knowledge systems, I think, is doing a great job in bringing out these stories to the fore. So very inspiring. I want to go there once. And I also came across the thing that Britannica has renamed most of the mathematical findings as the prefixed Madhava's name because he invented so many theorems which are used in so many inventions today, 200-300 years before the European mathematicians themselves did.
it's interesting that you should mention Britannica. It's high time we created our own,
Yes,
encyclopedias.
yes, yes.
We need to do that. See, one of the things that sorry to digress. Sorry, one of the things that bothers me is, I use the word processor, whether it's on Linux or whether it's on Windows. And if I write an Indian name, say if I write the name Jagannathan or Ramesh, it's underlined. When I write Smith or something, it's not underlined.
Not right.
We don't even create our own dictionary. This is sad. Younger people need to do that. Bring it for ourselves. Take pride in what we use. And yes, if you're going to adopt English into your, by all means adopt it. Just grab it. Say we have, you called it Indo-European, nah? நீங்க தான் சொன்னீங்க. So we'll use it.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. So from page 149, I'll quote Tilak from your book. It turns out that another Indian scholar had actually discovered similar references in ancient texts even before Jacobi. In 1893, Balagangadhar Tilak had noted a reference in the Rig Veda in the occurrence of vernal equinox in the constellation Orion, dating the event back to 4000 BC. That's the antiquity which we are talking. And to the more later contemporary his historian Nilesh Oak, who writes, who has taken about 900 astronomical references from the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata and correlated with the paleoclimate and paleogeographical scientific data to arrive at the dates 5561 BCE for the Mahabharata and 12,209 BCE for the Ramayana. In fact, we had Nilesh Oak in 2 weeks ago, sir. It was very nice session. And following that, it so happened, not by design, but just by that, we have you here. So it's very nice, very interesting. So how old would you call the Sanskrit? And what is your, and Tamil also is equally old, sir. What is your understanding, sir?
See, this is I can, again, when I have to talk about it using the evidence I have, Sanskrit is at least 5,000 years old. Okay. Now the connection with Tamil. Now, where is the proof that Sanskrit is at least 5,000 years? We don't have actual direct proof. We only have astronomical references that people were there. Tamil also is extremely old. Now, again, at least there is some degree of proof that Tamil was probably there around 300 BC. But Tamil is much, much older than 300, much older, because already it was very developed. And what people don't realize in the charged political atmosphere of these days, There was a German guy called MNO, okay, who said that he came up with a theory called linguistic area. What he called in German is a Sprachbund. So what happens is in a linguistic area, you have different languages meshing with each other, contributing to the other, and mixing up with each other. And so Tamil and the South Indian languages and the so-called Indo-European languages of North India are actually very closely linked in many ways. And I wrote a paper about this. The paper is on ResearchGate. What I did was I took many words that were in, I selected several. There is a way of, there's actually a thing called lexicostatistics. It's a science that linguists use, not a science. It's a statistical model that science used to find out relationships between languages. And the funny thing is you find bigger connections between, say, Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Punjabi, and Kannada, Malayalam, Tamil, and Telugu. The connections are more than the connections that you have between these North Indian languages and European languages. The paper is there. I'll send you the link. The paper is there online. And this is something I'd like to work on. And nobody is interested in doing that, especially the West. Westerners are not bothered anymore. They've made their theories. Now they've cooked up their own language. They've cooked up PIE. Now they're saying PIE is our God. They're not bothered anymore. We have to do our work, and we have to find out the connections. I think I did a lot of research for that paper. I will send you including Tamil. Tamil is very old, so it has maintained a kind of linguistic culture of its own. And although there are very close links between Kannada, Tamil, and Telugu, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, and all have started using the Devanagari alphabet. Okay, so you have certain structures, but there is a lot of common grammatical commonality between the other Indian languages. I'll send you the link to the paper. It's freely available.
Okay. In fact, the Western Indologist, one Wim Borsboom, whom we might know, has placed Sanskrit and the other Indian languages like Tamil, Malayalam. He says these are one of the oldest languages in the world. He places them in a very high
I'm sure that. Yeah, I know. I've been in touch with Wim Borsboom through village.
Oh, okay. Okay. So in page 176, there's a small interesting bit, and I think someday I wish to visit this place, Aihole. Evidence from archaeological finds in the southern Indian state of Karnataka, in an ancient town called Aihole. You've given the right pronunciation also. There exists an inscription from 634 AD by King Pulakesan II. The inscription itself is in Sanskrit, written in Kannada script, and is a eulogy to the king, but it mentions a date stating the number of years that have elapsed since the Mahabharata war. From this inscription, it is possible to date the Mahabharata war to 3102 BCE. This would place the Vedas as being much, much older. Beautiful, sir. This is a very concise but very, very knowledgeable, knowledge-giving, and a thorough research work which you have given about 7 years in bringing out this beautiful book. Thank you so much for this material, sir.
Always a pleasure.
And I think we have the audience keen to ask a lot of questions. Can we open the floor for the questions?
Sure, always, no problem.
Somebody wanted to ask a few questions, you can ask, please.
May I ask a question?
Please, go ahead.
Sure.
Yes, just a second. Dr. Shiv Shastry ji, thank you so much. I bought your book, I think, about quite some time back, and I have been reading it from time to time. It is not just like, I read it and kept it away. It's a wonderful book. Many congratulations on writing this. One question which I have regarding this book is about that language avastha, where you say that, it is actually a created language. And then after it has been created based on Sanskrit, again, it has been mapped as a sister of Sanskrit. I didn't really understand how this has been used in the Aryan invasion theory. Can you please explain a little bit about it?
See, you know what, when the Europeans wanted to make the language come from Europe. Okay, what they said was, you know, they looked at Zoroastrian books. Okay, and they found a language that's very similar to Sanskrit. And they said, okay, this is the sister language of Sanskrit. So therefore, people came from Europe. They came riding on horses from Europe, and one set went off towards Iran and started speaking Avestan. I'll come to that word Avestan later. And another set went towards India and created Sanskrit language. So they said these two are two different languages. They are sister languages. This is what they said. First of all, then they called that, they said this language was there and we will call it Avestan. So the linguists called it Avestan. There is no reference to any Avestan language in any Zoroastrian book. The fact is, the closeness of Zoroastrian language and Vedic Sanskrit is extraordinary. If you look at it from the Indian viewpoint, the Western language is just the Prakrit. It's just broken away from Sanskrit. And what has happened is, you know, the Rig Veda is older. Rig Veda knows nothing about the Avestan. But what happens is, not Avestan, the Zoroastrian language has references to the Atharva Veda and Rig Veda. So it came later. It is this. There are actually common passages between Atharva Veda, which is the last Veda. There are actually word for word common passages between Atharva Veda and the Zoroastrian language. And Zoroastrian culture is so similar to Vedic culture. They also have a, you know, thread ceremony, punal type ceremony. You know, they also used to have schools where an elderly teacher called children who would come, start at the age of some 7 or 8 years, like Vedic Pathshalas. Clearly, they are just an offshoot of the old Vedic civilization, which the Westerners don't want to accept. Because they have already made their theory. They've made their theory, it's over. This is the issue. And Avestan is just a name they cooked up. How the name came, I've just described that, because one French fellow came to India, the 17th century, I think. He stayed with Parsi priests. And the Parsi priests taught him a few things, and he went back to France and wrote a book called Ouvrage de Vesta or something. I forgot the name exactly. It's there in the book. And then these European linguists found this book, Ouvrage de Vesta, and then got the name Avesta from there, and Avestan they started calling. Okay. How the word Avestan came, possibly there are various theories. One is, you know, it's about a best tag. A best, you know, it's a book, basically a book of chants. That's what it is. Okay, so that is the connection. It's not a sister language, it's a Prakrit. Sanskrit was already there. Avestan,
so it's a daughter language.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's a daughter.
Yeah. And then basically what they speak about Greater Iran would probably be like Greater India.
Yeah, there's almost no doubt about that. You know, the way the culture was and things like that, because the Vedic culture actually predates the Zoroastrian civilization. And of course, the word Iran, the name Iran came in 1935. It was known as Persia before that.
Yes.
So there's clear evidence of that. I don't know why they call it Indo-Iranian, this, that, it's all cooked up. Actually, it was a Nazi minister who convinced the Shah of Iran to say, call yourself Aryans. So rename your country Iran. Till then, it was called Persia.
So there is this German connection.
Oh yeah, there's a German connection. Oh, they have, you know, Germans are, see, there is a man called, I'll tell you, big scholar. Germans are among the biggest, you know, most jingoistic racists, actually. Although, you know, this is the fact.
So many thanks, sir. And thanks to Verandah for organizing this. And we got to hear from you. Many thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Any other questions? Arvind, Balaji sir, Sundar sir, any questions? I will quickly quote Nilesh Shokji on what he has quoted on the book, about this book. This book is a treasure for adherents of Aryan invasion theory, for it may finally lead them to give up the dogma of AIT, and the book is a treasure to critics of AIT. Yet I see highest value of this book for those rare original researchers who are always in search of tough, unsolved problems. This book points out many such in every discipline being discussed in this book. The book is super rich in information, absolutely, yet fast-paced and easy to read, truly. A reader will come back to this book multiple times, a must read for anyone who cares for the truth, a fakery of the Aryan invasion theory, and keen on seeing truthful narrative of Indian civilization in textbooks, academia, and in public discourses. Nilesh Ogji has summarized the saramsam, as you call it in Tamil, about this book very well, sir. So this is one dimension of your writing, sir. But also on your YouTube, I'm sorry, digressing from this subject. Cyber Surge is your YouTube channel, which you had started way back in 2000s, and the friends here in Coimbatore, few of them are big fans of yours. And today you have self-taught animation, and I saw 2 or 3 of your videos, beautiful, on how you have created original content through animation, and also through satellite imaging you have derived, and also you have and on the Balakot airstrikes before and after, things like that, the through the
It's a good one.
landslide,
I
through the
enjoyed that. Yeah.
it was fantastic, sir. Sometimes, because these are stories which give goosebumps to us nationalists. So this is one part of the filter coffee session which we have today, sir. With the audience, on behalf of the Verandah Club, may I request you sometime in the near future, can we have a session with you on subjects of national security, and also what made you understand how, because it's very inspiring.
I would love to. I would love to. The thing is, let me tell you something. Confession. I have been interested in military aviation since 1962 when I was 7 years. Okay. So, I have picked up and strategic affairs. That's one. Second thing is, I was among the earliest people to become an admin on bharatrakshak.com, which was the world's biggest Indian military website. So I was one of the early people there. In the late 90s, it started. In fact, that's where I met Nilesh Ogji. Nilesh Ogji and I have a connection from Bharat Rakshak. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's how I got interested in his work, and we exchange information. So yes, this is a topic that's close to my heart, and I do want to talk. I feel I've picked up so many things that I need to say. I would be happy to talk and answer any questions, speak about military, strategic affairs, whatever. I have done a fair amount of, work on that. So I'm still working on that in many ways. Yeah.
Wonderful, sir. Looking forward for that.
Thank you.
Any questions, audience, before we wrap up this wonderful, enlightening session with Dr. Shiv Shastri ji? Okay, I think that's about it. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you
It
all.
was my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Very, very
Lovely
enlightened
to
today.
see you.
Very, very enlightened. Honored to have you on our platform, sir. Looking forward to seeing you again, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, sir.
Good night.
Good night.